In a variation on Batmanimation, this video explores my personal top 10 episodes of the 1996 to 2000 Superman animated series entitled Superman the Animated Series. This was a difficult list to compile due to generally consistent episode quality strength within the show, unlike Superman's actual physical strength within the show, which seems to fluctuate between scenes. Apologies are issued in advance for any predictable choices, as the list begins with Speed Demons. Superman and the Flash race in an amusing episode presenting an evolving, rewardingly warm, humorous dynamic between the two heroes, which skillfully, refreshingly subverts the typically serious character meets humorous character dynamic to instead present a subtly humorous character meets boisterously humorous character dynamic. Pleasing displays of visually appealing powers, versatile settings, and exciting, escalating conflict are marred only by a villain, the Weather Wizard, so called because I often wonder whether he's a wizard. That's not funny, I'll cut that bit out. I didn't cut that bit out. Who, despite holding some potential, is a mostly fairly two-dimensional foe, though his limited characterization arguably allows more time to focus on our heroes. Obsession. A celebrated supermodel is targeted by the villainous Toyman in his second appearance. The menace, morbidly humorous absurdity, and rampant creativity offered by said villain's presence is conveyed via an unpredictable story that addresses fascinatingly profound elements of science fiction and philosophical questions on the nature of humanity in a concise, accessible manner. In fact, it's much more concise and accessible than this review. One disappointment is that the masterfully subtle, tantalizingly dark implications of the episode's final scene are negated by future DCAU episodes, which establish that what we were led to assume happened to a certain character actually didn't. New Kids in Town. While pursuing the villainous Brainiac through time and space, the Legion of Superheroes, who, for those uninitiated, are essentially a legion of superheroes, it's a good thing I clarified that, isn't it? Meet a teenage Clark Kent in Smallville. A playful plot, colourful, respectfully interpreted characters, engrossing, intricate sci-fi elements, excitingly varied superhero action, and sincere character drama, in a rarely explored context since no Superman show documents Clark Kent's teenage life in Smallville, apart from Smallville, holds only one minor flaw related to an inevitable lack of tension. Since Clark Kent becomes Superman, spoilers, Brainiac's failure to kill the young Clark Kent is a foregone conclusion. This lack of tension, however, results in some positivity, since it allows a relaxed viewing experience, and arguably very few episodes of superhero cartoons create the impression of genuine villainous victory. The suspense typically stems from how the villain will be defeated, as opposed to whether the villain will be defeated. Brave New Metropolis. In a parallel dystopian world, Lois Lane explores a dictatorship run by a grief-stricken Superman and Lex Luthor. This mature, inventive tale offers thorough characterization, world building, gripping narrative escalations, striking visuals, and examinations of ever-relevant themes such as overcoming adversity and moral conflict. Superman never interacting with his alternative self is a slightly missed opportunity. However, had this happened, the focus on a worthy and resourceful Lois Lane may have suffered. Nighttime. Superman impersonates Batman to investigate the Dark Knight's disappearance, accompanied by Tim Drake's Robin. What is this, a crossover episode? It clearly is, I already knew that. I shouldn't have asked myself. Thanks to a loving exploration of Batman's world complete with clearly defined and purposeful appearances from Roxy Rocket, the Penguin, Bane, Riddler and the Mad Hatter, a rich sense of humour, a warm, developed dynamic between charming characters, stimulating fight sequences, and an absorbing mystery, Nighttime is the show's second best Batman crossover, but also the second worst because there were only 3. One slight flaw is that characters seemingly never deduce that the Batman they encounter in the episode is not the usual Batman, in spite of his massive increase in powers, though this is perhaps due to them being too panicked or confused to reach any conclusions. With the midpoint reached, 3 honourable mentions will be discussed prior to the reveal of my top 5. I've chosen to include 3 episodes in this section because 3 is the number of episodes I've chosen to include in this section. Several playlists linked above featuring similar videos may interest fans of DC animation, So may my slightly alternative decision, made to reflect the fact that Superman often joins forces with other heroes in this series. Definitely wasn't the reason I did this, I've only just noticed the similarity, but let's pretend it was always the plan. To consult DCAU aficionado Serum Lake to provide his views on the honourable mentions selected by me. Take it away, Luke, for a limited amount of time before we come back to me, because this is, technically my video. Anyway, Luke, the floor is yours, for now.
The first episode to appear on Connor's almost top 10 but not quite episodes of Superman the Animated Series is a little bit of a cheat because it's Apocalypse Now, the two-part storyline. Now I can understand why Apocalypse Now might not quite make it into the top 10 list. This two-parter shines a spotlight on one of the biggest evils in the DC universe, Darkseid, ruler of Apocalypse. This entire story is a rare instance of Superman going up against an insurmountable force and losing. Yes, he is able to repel the forces of Apocalypse thanks entirely to the intervention of New Genesis, but he suffers a humiliating defeat at the hands of Darkseid, and one of his key allies loses his life. What makes this more poignant is the fact that the character, Inspector Dan Turpin, was physically modelled after the legendary comic book creator Jack Kirby, creator of Darkseid, the New Gods, and the rest of the Fourth World characters. Sadly, Kirby passed away before this episode hit the air. I think the most interesting thing about this episode is the insight it gives us into Superman and how he deals with loss. Superman may be the last son of Krypton, but his reaction to his perceived failure to protect his friend is probably his most human moment in the entire series, and there aren't very many episodes of Superman that end on such a downer. Next, we have Identity Crisis. Given that this episode introduces Superman's developmentally challenged clone, Bizarro, you're probably expecting me to make some sort of Bizarro speak joke like, "This am bad episode." But no, I'm not going to grasp at that low-hanging fruit. All jokes aside, Identity Crisis is a great episode that shows that there is a fundamental part of Superman that drives him to be heroic. We see this because Bizarro is also heroically inclined, despite the fact that he is a mere genetic copy of Superman with different memories and experiences. Yes, Bizarro misunderstands a lot of situations, but his heart is in the right place. It's a strong script from Bob Goodman, with some amusing moments, juxtaposed with some Frankensteinian horror. This episode probably wouldn't feature on my top 10 list, but it'd be pretty close to the top. Now, the question I have about this episode is, how did Bizarro instantly change from his regular Superman costume into his Bizarro costume? The inescapable conclusion is that his costume is also part of his skin. Speaking of skin, we have The Way of All Flesh. If this episode had a tagline, it would be, Metallo gets angry because he doesn't enjoy forcing himself on women anymore. Returning baddie John Corbin finds that he has contracted a rare, incurable disease, and that the only way to save his life is to transfer his mind into a kryptonite-powered robotic body. And, wouldn't you know it, his pal Lex Luthor just so happens to have one to hand. What are the chances? It's not clear if they transplanted his brain into his new body. They do use the word transplant, but it seems to be not so specific. Or maybe they just copied his mind over somehow. So there's a philosophical question to be asked in this scenario. Is he still John Corbin, despite the fact that his body and mind don't exist anymore, or is he just a murderous superpowered machine that thinks it was a man? I do not have the answer to this question, and I can see the argument for both sides. Corbin initially enjoys his newfound power, but he quickly realises that while he can't be hurt, he also can't feel anything. He can't smell anything, he can't taste anything, and he's stuck like this. The revelation that they wouldn't be able to restore his senses is enough to drive him mad, as he pulls away at his synthetic flesh, exposing his hidden metallic underside. The only hunger he has now is for power, his only thirst for revenge. If you couldn't tell already, I really like this episode. I like the fact that they introduced Corbin in The Last Son of Krypton with the expressed purpose of making him later become Metallo. And there's something devilish about the glee on Metallo's face as he tries to force Lex Luthor to ingest some of that virus sample. It's a very well animated episode, and it would probably be on my top 10 list.
Thanks, Luke. The official list will commence with Fun and Games. Toyman, real name Mr. Toyman, not really his name. The DCAU only uses sensible names for their villains, like Mr. Freeze, real name Victor Freeze. Debuts, I'm talking about Toyman now, not Mr. Freeze, in this gripping, textured tale of vengeance in which he provides a measured blend of palpable tension, partially due to Harold and Maude's own Bud Court's appropriately chilling, emotive performance, valid tragedy, sharp humour, visual splendour, and captivatingly creative action set pieces, as well as a stronger, clearer sense extensive conflict than Toyman's previously discussed episode. The only weakness is the subtle implication of an interesting plot point which remains fully unexplored. The main man. Superman meets the ruthlessly determined bounty hunter Lobo in this two-part tale which is being treated as a single episode, even though it's clearly not. Thanks to expansive, vividly imaginative world building, versatile characters, vibrant visuals, harmoniously interconnected engrossing storylines, impressive violence, appropriately whimsical dark humour, the commendable demonstration of Superman's intelligence as well as his physical power, and Brad Garrett's enormously suitable voice performance as Lobo himself, are the characteristics that result in an incredibly strong installment of a generally incredibly strong series. Using only American accents for the wide array of alien species feels slightly limiting, and results in a missed opportunity to use other accents to further highlight the diversity of the various life forms shown. As I've said in previous videos, a Welsh accent could have been a valid choice for this role too. I was available, I was also one, so I probably wouldn't have even demanded particularly high pay. World's finest. The Man of Steel meets the Dark Knight when the latter appears in Metropolis, while a deal is being struck by Lex Luthor, in which he'll pay for the kryptonite-induced murder of Superman, as propositioned by the Clown Prince of Crime. What a joker. I'm sorry, even I felt the physical pain of that one, and I knew I was about to say it. A meticulously crafted plot rife with intrigue and rising tension, rich, evolving characters enlivened by a dedicated, talented cast. Joining the S-TAS regulars are, among others, the late great Kevin Conroy as Batman, the late great Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, and the definitive Joker voice actor Mark Hamill. Ambitious scale, articulate dialogue, and welcome, intelligent levity unfolds in an effectively perfect three-part story. The length, however, is a faint negative. Being comprised of 3 connected episodes means that it requires more committed viewing than single-episode stories that generally lend themselves to more casual viewing. Another faint negative is that Lois Lane's immediate attraction to Bruce Wayne feels somewhat uncharacteristic. The late Mr. Kent, in which Clark Kent investigates a murder and is soon targeted by the mysterious culprit. This engrossing, authentic film noir tribute provides a mesmerizing identity, while the fantastical factors of the Superman mythos allow for a form of surprise, complication, and excitement rarely found in the noir genre. This vastly cerebral, impeccably paced, powerfully character-driven drama is daringly, tastefully dark, and lovingly, gracefully celebrates the assets of both Clark Kent and Superman. So great is the strength of this episode that it's almost completely interchangeable with my first choice, which by the way is Mixes Pixelated. Superman meets a powerful, impish, interdimensional being in a gleefully surreal, constantly exciting, wholly original adventure. Further enlivened by colourful visuals and the appropriate, enthusiastic voice performance of the late great Gilbert Gottfried. Superman's intelligence and warmth is displayed in a hugely satisfying fashion, while classic Looney Tunes cartoon shorts are affectionately honoured in a fitting, intelligently modernised manner. This ranks marginally higher than the previous episode because its comical tone lends itself more to rewatchability, though it is slightly confusing that in order to battle Superman, Mr. Mxyzptlk, a character clearly capable of creating any object with little to no effort, opts to build a battlesuit rather than magically producing one. I expected more realism from this cartoon about a super strong, flying humanoid alien whose identity is hidden by a thin pair of glasses. With the list concluded, I'll once again thank Serum Lake for his contributions. I'll also thank Siegel and Schuster, the men who created Superman, the creative team of this series, and countless other creatives who've respectfully immortalised the messages of hope that the Man of Steel carries. And finally, I'll thank you viewers for watching. And if I don't see you next time, I hope it's at least known that Superman wishes you all a pleasant evening and a restful sleep. Good night. Dying swans, twisted wings, bring this Kryptonian back home. A brave new metropolis, in a brave new metropolis. A brave new metropolis.